Hi everybody, welcome to webinar number 4 in the very popular series 30 Minutes with Servoy. I'm Jan Edelman and the founder of Servoy, and today's presenter is Sean Devlin, Senior Engineer at Servoy. Sean helps ISVs to get up to speed with Servoy's great technology, and today he's going to share something new with us that we'll talk about in a second. In this short but in-depth webinars, we show new features, components, and solutions. So please keep sending in your suggestions on forum.servoy.com. You'll find a main thread where you can post your suggestions. Or if you don't want to go to the forum, just Twitter them at Servoy and somebody will pick it up. Today, Sean will be presenting a new web component, which I'm actually quite excited about. I like to use these kind of components. In fact, it's an early release, but we're putting it out to get your feedback on it. We put a lot of work in these sessions, not just slides and demos as we're doing, but actual components and solutions are being released after every session, all free. So in return, I'm going to ask you a favor. If you haven't done so yet, go to GitHub and create an account, and then post issues on the projects you've started or are going to start using, like the one we're going to release today, which will be available right after this webinar, if I'm not mistaken. So please go ahead and do that. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to post them in the questions channel, where I will be keeping an eye out on. We'll make sure to address all of those questions, whether during or after the session, depending on the time that we have. We try to keep the session within about 30 minutes. If you like what you're seeing, feel free to post a tweet at Servoy in it so that we can see it as well. All right, having said that, let's get started. Sean, are you ready?
I am ready. How's my audio?
Sounds very good.
Okay. And my screen's visible?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, excellent. So this is the last in this tech series for the year. We're going to continue next year. And we've been sort of alternating so far between web component updates, which favor the new HTML5 client, and then other topics as well, including best practices, new modules, samples, tips, etc. But this one is focused on a new web component that we're excited about. We decided in our sort of roadmap for what components to build, it's driven a lot by what our customers need and what feedback we receive. And one of the items that we're seeing is that we need a solid charting component that's sort of versatile and all-purpose and can be used easily in Servoy solutions. So, of course, we don't build this from scratch. We look at what open source libraries are out there, and we identified ChartJS as the best candidate to use in Servoy. Of course, you could use other chart libraries as well. This doesn't mean that you're going to be limited to this only, but this is the one we decided to start with, mostly because the API is very clear and straightforward. It has a wide range of features, and it has the right license as well, which is important. So what we've done is we've wrapped this component, made it available as a Servoy web component, so you can drag and drop onto your form, and then you can also bind it to a found set so that you can supply the data directly from a form found set or a related found set or a global relation. We also have started with the event binding, and so you can handle events that happen down in the browser on the component itself. And we also leave open the sort of raw chart options and data sets that can be passed in, so that your data might come from elsewhere other than a found set. It might be something programmatic or something hard-coded. So if you want to go directly to the component, you can use the full options that are available, and we'll take a look at what those look like. So enough talking about it. Let's do a demo, and then we can revisit sort of how it works. I have here sort of a simple sales order screen, and you can see in the middle I have a chart. This chart has been configured to show the relative cost in the order of each item that's on the order. I can change the type of chart that is used, and I have a few of the options available. There are others as well in this library. You can see pie charts, fancy things like polar area. There's also radar charts, bubble charts, etc. But this one's focused just on a few. So you'll notice also that as I change the chart type, it's updating immediately, but also as I kind of click through my different orders, you can see that because the data the chart is bound directly to the orders to order, the order items found set, a related found set, you can see that the chart redraws itself. There's no code involved in that. It's just the found set binding, which is quite nice. You'll also notice that if I were to change, say, the quantity of one of these products, the currently selected product here is Chang at 20, and make it something like 200, that the chart redraws and you can see the relative value, $3,000 on the order, and it takes up a larger area on the donut chart. You'll also notice that there's an event binding to the chart. So if I'm clicking around on the chart, what I've done is just trap that event and have it select the right record down here. It's kind of arbitrary, but it demonstrates that as I click around in the different values on the chart, and it doesn't matter what chart type it is, you'll see that it's updating this found set selected index down here. So this is an example of the found set binding chart. Let's go into the IDE and take a look at how this is hooked up, and then we'll come back and look at some other examples. So I switch over to Servoy Developer. I have open here the order details form, and you can see that the web package for the ChartJS is available here in the palette, and you simply drag and drop that onto the form, and then you can see in the properties you can set up the binding. So first of all, I can change what the default type is to one of those. I can also set up the found set binding. In this case, I've selected orders to order details. You can use this form's found set. You use a separate name found set or a global relation. Once you've selected your found set, then you can bind the different configurations of the data providers in this found set. In this case, I've only hooked it up to what supplies the label and what supplies the value. But the colors are sort of hard-coded into the chart component as like default colors. But of course, I could make a calculation on the table to return the background color and change the color on hover, etc., the border width. Currently, those are all coming from default values, but they can be dynamic from the data source. So it's really that easy. You just go and you pick the data providers that you want. Any data providers work: columns, calculations, aggregates, global variables, etc., form variables, and then you're ready to go. It'll render the data. Also, you'll notice that when I was clicking in the chart, I was able to trap the click, which is sent back to the server, and I can handle that and do something with it. In that case, I just synchronize it to the form's found set. So you can trap the event in and handle it server side in one of your functions. Let me go in and show that to you. In this case, it just passes the index in the series that was clicked, and then the label and the value. That's a zero-based index, so I increment it by 1. As you know, the found set indexing starts at 1, and so then I sync it up here by selecting in the order details grid there, the selected index. You also will have noticed that on the order details form, I put a little combo box there so that I could change the chart type. That is simply bound to a form variable So I created a form variable chart type here, and then I handle the data change event, and I pass in to the element the chart type. So you could see that there's also, if I link with the editor here, there's a runtime API for the chart to dynamically set the type, and to you could dynamically set the font set. Don't know that that makes sense. There's also this other method where you can pass in the full chart data. So if you don't want to bind to a font set, it's okay. There's just sort of the baseline support for all of the chart options, and you can pass that in as an option. And I have some examples of what that looks like. So let's switch back to our example here, and you can see that I have a bar chart. In this case, there's more than one data set. So when it's bound to a font set, there's only one data set. But here I'm able to supply a comparison chart with two data sets. I could combine two different charts in one. Here's a bar line combo. Donuts we saw. Again, two different data sets as lines. Also, currently a line chart with a font set binding doesn't make too much sense because there's only one value data provider. We can support a line chart bound to a font set by providing an X data provider and a Y data provider. So we plan to do that. But in the example I showed you, it doesn't really make much sense. It makes more sense if you have two data points for every point on the graph. We saw pie charts, polar area we saw, radar we did not see. Here's radar with two different data sets again. Also the ability to do a stacked bar with two different data sets. So let's take a look back in Servoy Developer at some of those examples. Let's take a look at the bar chart example. You can see in the on-show event, it's drawing the chart, and I can maximize this. And this is different than the font set bound option. This is just passing in the raw chart configurations. And this doesn't really deviate from the underlying ChartJS library. If you were to use this outside of Servoy, this is the same way that you would populate that. It just sends it down and redraws the chart. So you can see that there's really three components to this. There's the chart type, which we've set as bar. There's the data options, which includes this array of data sets. And so in this case, there's two data sets as opposed to the font set bound, which only has one. And then there's the chart options, and this is where you can pass in some information, in this case, about the X and Y axes. Finally, there's the draw graph, where you pass in this object, and away you go. Pretty much any one of those examples that I showed you which don't use the fonts, they mostly look the same, just with different configurations. So here's the line one. You can see the type is line. A bit different configurations here. There's some hover, background color changing, etc. So it's really up to you, and again, more chart options. It's really up to you if you want to go the easy route and just do the font set bound directly to data. If you really want to get customized, or your data is not really coming from a font set, then you can do sort of the raw root node and pass it in to the chart. So that's pretty much it. It's a short demo today. We welcome some questions and feedback. Jan, is there any questions coming in?
Yes, there are, Sean. Great demo, by the way. Even I understand it. All right, so let's see. There's a question from Jos. Is a scatter chart also possible?
Scatter's also possible. I just didn't have a sample of that.
That's great to hear. All right, so let's pretend, Sean, that I don't have this component installed like you do. Then how do I start using it in a Servoy solution?
Okay, so this is available on, I was prepared for this question. This is available on GitHub, and the homepage for that is the SVY ChartJS project. So you can get the raw source code. You could also download any unreleased versions there, but of course we want to make it easier. So if you are in the IDE and you have your new solution you want to add it to, simply go to the Web Packages Manager and open this up. We've made it public there. You can see that we're on version 1.0.0 beta 1, so this is a beta version. And all you have to do is, this you can see it's added already, but you would click this plus button and it will automatically install it and make it available to your solution, and then it would show up here in the palette where I was able to drag and drop it on and start using it. So there's really not much work to install it. Also, the example solution that I just showed you is available on that same, if you go to the release page on GitHub, you see that here's the release where we have any release notes and the binaries you can download, the example solution, which is a .servoy export file, and you can import and begin using it. If you import the sample solution, you do also have to install the components separately. A solution import never installs components. They're separate dependencies that you have to install on your own. I should also point out that, and just repeat what Jan said at the beginning of the webinar, we really encourage you to create a GitHub account and get accustomed to that if you haven't already. If you can add yourself to watch repositories so you can be notified by email if there's a change. You can file issues on the issues page. We already know of a few issues with this component that we're working on, and you'll get emails when you watch repository about new releases. So it's really a good place to start. Also, I want to point you to the ChartJS documentation. This is especially useful for the second option I showed, where you're not bound to a found set, but you want to pass in the raw information. You can see that the different charts that are supported, and there's examples. Someone asked about scatter charts. So here's an example of how you would do a scatter chart. It's really this object that you pass in with the chart type, the data, and the chart options to do that. And there's clear documentation here and examples. There's also lots of questions and answers on Stack Overflow. It's a pretty widely used library, so there's good support for it. It's one of the reasons why we chose it.
Cool.
So
that's good. All right. There's a few more questions coming in. While a couple more questions pop in, so feel free to post them. We still have a few minutes to go. I have a quick note. You may have seen this already on Twitter or in your email box, but we just announced Servoy World. If you are interested in learning more about Servoy World, then on our homepage, servoy.com, just click on the banner for Servoy World and you'll see all the details. It is going to be in Amsterdam on May 17. It's the place to not only learn a lot about Servoy, but also to meet the engineers, meet the R&D team, to meet other people at Servoy, and obviously other developers, and share a lot of interesting things with them, and also obviously have a beer or whatever your favorite drink is. We're doing it for the second time in Casa 400, a very nice hotel, actually one of the few conference hotels that has very good internet connectivity, which we all love, I guess. Make sure to sign up early if you want to save some money. I believe we have an early bird going on if you sign up soon. I think in the next month or so. It's only 385 euros. We really try to keep this conference priced as low as possible so that you can come with all of your colleagues to it. If you're not based in the Netherlands, obviously there's no excuse to come. It's very cheap to fly to Amsterdam from any place in Europe, so that's not an excuse. And even from the US, at the moment, if you go to flights.google.com, you can find flights as low as $400 coming from the US to Amsterdam. So it's great moments to visit Amsterdam. Also in May, the weather is usually pretty good. All right, having said that, a couple of questions coming in for you, Sean. There's a question from Imre. Does it already fit and scale within responsive form design? Any recommendations on that topic?
Currently, we have a small issue with the sizing of the because it's based on an HTML canvas that we're working on. So the ChartJS library does work in responsive and absolute position. And so currently, the responsive does not work in this beta release, but I see no reason why we can't get it to work. There's a small issue that's blocking us to get there. And so if you keep an eye on this repository, we'll make releases with release notes when that's resolved.
All right, excellent. And there's a question from Jos. Is there a specific reason for choosing ChartJS over, for example, Google Charts?
Yeah, we looked at Google Charts. ChartJS has a really straightforward API. It's really well documented. We also found that the contributors is a pretty high in number. That's important, I think, when you have an open source project. So Google Charts was on the list, but I might turn that question around to you and ask for your feedback. Why would you want something like Google Charts over something like ChartJS? Is there a specific feature or use case that you're interested in? Send us your feedback on the forum that Jan mentioned or directly in the issues section of the GitHub project.
All right.
If there's no more questions, Jan, I think I want to take a look forward real quick and just look at this, continuing the series. We've had a lot of positive feedback, so we want to keep it going next year. It's going to resume on Wednesday, January 11, and continue to run for every 2 weeks. Right now, the topics are to be determined, so it's important that you get your feedback in because it can really drive not only what the topics are, but also what kinds of open source modules, components, and example solutions we're able to work on.
Excellent. Yes, it is. Sending in feedback is critical to keep this series going because you tell us what you need us to deliver in terms of components, features, and capabilities.